So, we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks today. This is the early morning video, and the reason I'm putting this here is because the Canucks do play later tonight at 8 p.m., and that sucks. 8 p.m., man. Seriously, we're gonna have to do our hype stream at 7 p.m. and make a post-game video when it's like 1, 2 a.m. in Montreal? That really doesn't sound cool to me, man, but hey, we'll do it anyway because there are still some very interesting things to talk about when it comes to the Canucks and the Habs every time they play. But today we're talking about the trade rumors that have come up about this team via Elliotte Friedman on the recent 31 Thoughts article. He published this yesterday, and later after the publication, he went over onto Sportsnet 650 and had a few comments about the matter. So if you go over to the newest 31 Thoughts, a Jack Eichel injury is the latest bad news in the Sabres' cursed year, and you scroll all the way down to what's going to be an early thought over here. It's literally the third one on the list. It sounds like there's some interest in Vancouver's Tyler Motte, who played well in last season's playoffs. This is the time for telephone flirtation, where teams ask about so many things that don't go anywhere. I think the Vancouver Canucks were asked about Nate Schmidt, but I don't think that has any legs. Now that's the thought that was published in 31 Thoughts, and later that day, Friedman said this on Sportsnet 650, talking about Nate Schmidt. I think there's a team or two that has called about Schmidt, or that have straight up asked. I'm not convinced even Vancouver wants to do it. If you trade Schmidt, what are you replacing him with? I don't think they're interested in going backwards. But you know what? Just the woulds, coulds, or shoulds on the Vancouver Canucks side of things on whether or not they're interested in making a trade like this with Motte or Schmidt or whatever, doesn't matter. What we're talking about here is the idea that teams are going out there and actually asking about these players, because that in itself does bring up some really interesting discussion. Now for Tyler Motte, this is the really interesting and somewhat polarizing one to me. Because immediately upon reading that Tyler Motte might have had interest amongst other NHL teams, my brain immediately just clicked and I was like, okay, no, we're not trading another Tyler. Last time we did that, we traded away Tyler Madden, and then Tyler Toffoli left the team. We're not getting rid of our Tyler M's by getting rid of one of the only ones that's remaining alongside of Tyler Myers. But all joking aside, it was mostly just because Tyler Motte, we know who Tyler Motte is when he's in the lineup. He is a very good energy guy. He scores points too, which is absolutely phenomenal. He came alive in the playoffs last year. Even though he is not an Elias Pettersson in terms of the production, he is probably our most productive and offensively capable bottom line player. And I'm saying bottom line player because bottom six implies the third line, and the third line had like Brock Besser and like Gaudette and all that, and those guys are honestly pretty okay. But amongst the penalty kill guys, the Beagles, the Roussells, the Sutters, it's pretty much Tyler Motte, whom people recognize with that honestly pretty capable offensive touch. He's got 6 points in 15 games, 5 goals too. Last season in the playoffs, 4 goals in 17 games. Really clutch goals when he would score. But with all the penalty killing, the clutch goals, the hard work, and the overall story that's been portrayed of Tyler Motte in this media with the mental health struggles, which is very, very good and honorable to see in this city, of course, it puts Tyler Motte in a position where, as a hockey fan who watches this team, I don't want to trade this guy in the slightest. But if you take a look at what exactly he is, he's a guy whose contract expires in 2022, so a year from now, and he's making $1.2 million as an AAV. He literally turned 26 today, so happy birthday, Tyler Motte. We're talking about you in trade rumor videos. But this is a kind of guy whom, honestly, I would not be surprised if a playoff team went out there and said, hey, this is a really valuable bottom six kind of piece who could help us on the PK and who can score some clutch goals once in a while. He goes out there, he works really hard. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Motte could honestly enter a bidding war of some sort amongst teams that are already playoff contenders. And with the way that Tyler Motte's contract and his overall style of play is shaping up, this is a guy who, if he continues playing at this pretty honestly okay level, I would not be surprised if once 2022 comes and he needs an extension, he signs an even more juicy contract. First off, it's Jim Benning, so you know how he loves giving out money to the intangibles, right? But secondly, he's the kind of player that if he really does show off his worth in the playoffs like he did last year, he could really have a case for himself in demanding that type of money. And so, even though the sentimental side of me says, no, keep Tyler Motte, this guy's awesome, this guy's cool, he is an inspiration to hockey fans here in British Columbia, the analytical part of me says, well, the fact that his contract is expiring next year, the fact that he might actually be a hot commodity amongst playoff teams, the fact that he plays the type of game that teams honestly buy at the trade deadline. Look at Barclay Goodrow last year, Cedric Paquette last year, Tampa Bay making these acquisitions for bottom six forwards that really helped them out in the playoffs. And the price that they paid for those kind of guys, hey, it wasn't insignificant, it was honestly pretty beefy. So I'm kind of thinking about it like, if there's a team out there and saying, hey, can we get Tyler Motte, we'll give you a fourth or something, I'm saying absolutely not. If you want to give up a mid-first round pick, which is not going to happen, or you're going to give up a good prospect, a mid-tier, middle six caliber prospect for Tyler Motte, which is probably not going to happen, I would consider it then. If the return is that big, because some playoff teams get desperate once the trade deadline comes because they really want their bottom six guys who can help kill penalties. And Motte, who has an offensive touch too, and who's only making $1.2 million, he can help in that department. This is not like Jay Beagle, who's making $3 million. Analytically, the Tyler Motte contract is a lot more valuable, and it's why, even though I love Tyler Motte, my brain starts clicking in ways that I don't want it to when I start thinking about the idea of a Tyler Motte trade. But on the other side, Nate Schmidt is a guy whom, if teams are asking about, and they're saying anything remotely better than a third-round pick, automatically Jim Benning is in a spot where he has leverage in these kinds of deals because there's equity there. Now, Friedman is right. Why would you trade Nate Schmidt? Because you have a guy here who analytically is one of the best Canucks defensemen on the team in terms of controlled defensive zone breakouts and efficiency rates. It's just when he coughs up the puck, it's terrible, and it sometimes, most of the time, leads to a Vancouver goal against. But hey, Nate Schmidt is actually producing now, which is what we expected out of Nate Schmidt. But the thing is, if the Vancouver Canucks trade Nate Schmidt, it's going to be hard to find a replacement to fill in that kind of role, because Nate Schmidt plays a very different kind of game that only really is matched by Quinn Hughes, and that's about it. The right side's honestly kind of weak enough. With Tyler Myers, you have the Jordy Benz that can play on the right side, you have the Raffertys over there, and no disrespect to any of those players, but do you expect any of those guys to be able to replace what a Nate Schmidt is to the Vancouver Canucks right now? I don't know, right? But that's the beauty of these rumors, right? It's just stuff that Friedman is saying, yeah, these are usually just the kind of flirting you do over the telephone. It's not really anything that usually ever comes to fruition. It's just checking up. It's just talking to other GMs around the league and asking about players because, hey, you've got nothing better to do than actually scout the market and see what things cost. Not because you think you're legitimately going to get Nate Schmidt in a trade, but because you're asking Vancouver what the price would be, and Vancouver is laying it out. So, do I expect Tyler Motte or Nate Schmidt to get traded? Probably not. Would I trade Tyler Motte or Nate Schmidt? Personally, no. But under certain circumstances, I think I could see myself in a scenario where I am convinced to trade Motte, but it's really specific, the context in which I would personally allow that to happen. It would actually have to only be to a certain kind of team willing to give up a certain kind of return with the certain intention they have of going far into the playoffs, for example. For Nate Schmidt, it's a bit different because the Vancouver Canucks really don't have another guy who is out there that could replace him in the lineup, and he plays significant minutes. Don't get me wrong, Tyler Motte plays significant minutes as well because he's out there on the PK and all that. He's doing good bottom six grinder things, and he's one of the only bottom six guys who can score. But the bottom line is the Canucks don't have Motte right now, and they're still doing pretty okay, if you ask me. So talk to me in the comments what you think about these ideas over here. Trading Tyler Motte, trading Nate Schmidt. Teams are asking about them. So what would be your return if you were in the position of making that decision? So talk to me in the comments. Is it similar to mine, your thought process, where under certain circumstances with certain teams, you would actually be okay with a trade with a Tyler Motte? Or is that the same with Nate Schmidt? Or would you just clamp your foot down and say, absolutely not, I'm not trading Tyler Motte for anything except for Connor McDavid? Talk to me in the comments what you think about all these ideas. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.